So glad to have you back, Holly.
Of course. Anytime.
So I wanted to have a conversation about neurodiversity and friendships because one of the most often requested advice for all of the support groups that I'm in and everything else is, how do I obtain a friend? Because the friendship piece seems to be ever elusive for a lot of people who are neurodivergent.
Yeah. I think, there's this, it's not a myth. It's not a, words are hard today. It's not there's a saying, a thought, I don't know, something like that. There's a thing that says that neurodivergent people tend to flock together. And I think that there's a reason for that. I think because we are used to making small adaptations to other people in the world, 90% of the time, that it is a lot easier to do that with another person, another human being who is also doing the same thing. But that can sometimes make it hard to be friends with people who don't understand that flexibility or don't have the coping strategies to have that level of flexibility either. It takes a lot of communication.
Now, what do you mean in terms of flexibility?
Well, for example, some of us may cancel plans quite a bit because I had every intention of doing the thing. And when push came to shove and we came down to that moment, I didn't have the energy, or I overdid it 2 days before and now I'm in a sensory overload mode, or I forgot I had 13 other things that I also have to do that day, or just whatever. There's cancellation of plans that can activate people. At the same time, a lot of us have different types of trauma that we're working with, and even those small flexibilities can really hone in on other people's existing trauma. For example, we have a good mutual friend. We were going to hang out one time and they had to cancel because they literally just were stressed. It happens. Stress happens. And it hit on my rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Yeah.
And so I panicked and thought that they didn't want to hang out or be my friend anymore or any of that. And I got really bummed out, and it had nothing to do with that. They just were stressed. But we had to have a conversation because while I understood them being stressed out, they understood me well enough to know that I was going to have to deal with those aftermath of those thoughts.
And I can get that. I'm at a point now where it's kind of the opposite for me.
Okay.
Where I know I shouldn't do something because I don't have the bandwidth or I'm going through something.
Yeah.
Yet I also know that I have certain friends that just don't have that rejection sensitivity, where if I were to cancel, I would feel like so much garbage on myself.
That's a hard one.
Because I don't want them to experience that. And even overcoming going above and beyond what a normal person would go through to help somebody.
Yeah.
Even then, I'm going to say yes, because of my own rejection sensitivity.
Right? There's this weird sort of people pleaser tendencies. If you've ever heard somebody talk about being a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah.
That's true for a lot of us.
I'm not in recovery yet.
Right. I'm still going full bore down the hill. And it's hard, but it's a form of self-care. It's a form of self-acknowledgement to be able to look at yourself and be like, I don't have it. Like today, this afternoon, I said, hey, are we still doing the thing today? And you're like, I don't know. Do you have capacity? And I went, yes, I think I do.
Yeah.
But I had to stop and think about it. And I appreciated that you asked, because if you would have asked me last night, I didn't have capacity, and I definitely did not. This morning, doing better, doing fine. Here we are, right? But sometimes it can change by the minute, by the hour. It can change by the nanosecond sometimes. It really just doesn't, it's not super picky and choosy.
Yeah, and sometimes, you have that day where you think everything's going great, and then you receive that one piece of news, and it's not bad news. It's just different news.
Yeah.
And now your brain's like, shit, I'm going to have to spend the next hour processing all of the new collective pathways because of this one piece of new information.
Have you ever tried to take things into the house and your arms are just full of stuff?
Yeah.
And like you're literally like you cannot hold anymore.
Yeah.
This is us on like a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Mental
so,
Tetris.
And so
Yeah.
that last one little thing is the difference between you dropping everything or the balance being thrown off so that you try to shift to catch it and it all falls on the floor. So yeah, it might be just a pen, but that pen in that spot trying to roll off that plate that was balanced on top of an egg carton is enough to send the whole thing falling down, and then everything crashes. And it's about knowing I'm kind of at my limit, or hope I went over my limit that time, and kind of knowing when to speak up and say something. I mean, more often than not, I think when it comes to friendships and neurodiversity and neurodivergency especially, it's about communication. You got to have that communication.
Yes. And over communicating.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
I jokingly say that I'm a hyper communicator. It drives some people nuts. But like, I would rather, so many of our text messages back and forth, y'all, are things like, okay, just in case it wasn't clear what I meant in that text message, here's the context of the, and Sean's just like, yes, I realize. I'm like, okay, I just wanted to make sure. It happens probably at least once a day.
Yeah, more like 2 or 3.
Right?
Yeah.
It happens a lot, and it's okay. But I don't like being misunderstood. That's one of my activators from growing up with having a neurodivergency and not having it be known. And so I just got misunderstood more often than not. And I hate that.
Yeah, be careful with the gun right there on the couch. I'm referring to Willow the cat.
Yes,
she is armed and dangerous this evening.
Yeah,
so.
she is. She's like, she's got the belly up. She's like, bring it on, try me.
Yeah, but she tries to entice you in by like, here's my belly, come pet me. But then she's like,
but it's a trap.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Yeah, it's a bear trap.
We know Willow.
We're on to you. We're on to you. You can't see her, but she's sitting right here.
So I guess the question that taking it back to like sort of like the friendship thing and the friendship piece, like where do people go to find friends? That's the one that I struggle with on a daily basis. Is it's like I
don't know that there's a good answer for that, unfortunately. I mean, what I would suggest is find people with the same level of weird that you have. Find people who are doing the things that you like to do, or do the things that you're naturally passionate about, and then pick your head up and look around and see who's there.
Yeah.
Because those are people who get you. Because they're there too, doing the same things. And also, don't be afraid to have like categorical friends. That's okay too. So like, it is very, very hard to find one person who is all the different things that is you.
Yes.
But like, maybe you have a karaoke friend that you hang out with when you're doing karaoke. Maybe you have a go to the farmer's market friend. Maybe you have a, it's okay to have little bits of a whole in a lot of different people. And I think for some of us neurodivergent folks, myself included, we try to look for all of that in one package, and that's a lot to ask.
Yeah, and I'm starting to notice, especially since I started this podcast, that I'm able to sort of do that. And before I had this podcast, that was never a possibility. And the reason it was never a possibility is because I didn't know how to initiate the conversation.
Didn't have the venue. You didn't have the icebreaker.
Yeah, I didn't have the start. Well, now I have a podcast, and I can start the conversation with, I think you would be amazing on your podcast.
Yeah. It's hard to go up and just be like, you're cool. We should hang out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then people look at you like,
yeah.
Okay.
Which has happened before, even recently, right? I met somebody the other day that I was like, oh, you're so cool. I would love to hang out. And like, yes, please give me your number. Never call me back. I was like, Offer still out there. You are cool. Anyway.
You know who you are.
You know who you are.
That's not creepy at all.
And I don't think he would find it that creepy either. At least I hope not. But anyway.
Who knows? But I do therapy. I openly do therapy. I think it is a wonderful tool.
Oh,
That if you
100%.
have the ability to have a therapist or a counselor or just somebody to talk to, please take it. It's so helpful, and it's not a shameful thing. It's not, that's my 5-second plug for therapy. But that being said, my therapist and I talk about quite frequently how my levels of friendships are off.
Interesting.
And so when I am talking about or thinking about friendships, I am thinking way more intense than most people do. And because of that, I can burn through friends really quickly because I'm a lot sometimes. And if you're not ready for that level of intensity, that can be a lot.
Yeah. And I'm trying to sort of see how I fit in there.
Like you personally?
Yeah.
I haven't to put a label on it, but
well, and not in terms of our friendship, but I mean in terms of like how I view and whether or not my friendship radar is sort of off in that regard too.
Yeah.
But then again, I just don't know the rules. You know, there's so many unwritten rules about how often you're supposed to text people, and
I don't play by that one either.
Yeah, I can't. I just can't. And I know it limits your options.
Right. We had this conversation yesterday. I'm on a couple different random dating sites, and I had somebody comment on something, and I realized it like maybe an hour later that I had rapid fire succession sent like 5 different texts back. It was all one cohesive thought, but it was like boom, 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 boom. And I went, oh, I scared him. Whoops. That was probably a lot, unless you were prepared for that level of intensity. But as far as this like shifting intensity levels go for friends, when you were at work, and you have somebody that you can talk to, maybe you just interact, maybe you do similar things, maybe you have cubicles next to one another, whatever. Most neurotypical people would consider that person a friend. Small f, friend.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, that's just a work person.
It's an acquaintance. It's a coworker.
Yeah.
If you can talk to them and carry on any sort of conversation, or you ask about how the weather was, or did you have any weekend plans, people consider that a friend.
Interesting.
This is where it gets a little weird for me. So I'm going, okay, if I can't tell you like deep stuff that's bothering me, I don't consider that a friend. I just consider that somebody I know.
Yeah.
An acquaintance, a work colleague, whatever. But a lot of people consider that person that they, sit in the cubicle next to and occasionally will have a lunch with, like, that's a friend. And I go, nah. Friend for me doesn't kick in until we can talk about heavy stuff like we're doing now. Or at least decent stuff, right?
I get that.
But for most people, that is like good friend.
Interesting.
And so my question to you is, when people say, I don't know how to find friends, are you looking for what neurotypical land consists to be a friend, or are you looking for neurodivergent level friend? Because that's totally different things. The second one's a lot harder to find.
And another thing that I find a lot of people throw out there is the term bestie too, which I find interesting.
Yeah, I think it's overused.
Well, in my circumstances, I feel like it applies to multiple people for different reasons.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, you have groups of friends. You have that friend that you call when things are in a crisis. You have another friend that you call when things are going good, and it's all the capacity they have to talk about. And so it's changing your communication style based on...
It's code switching.
Yeah. Which is...
Exhausting.
And it's also why I try not to schedule time with different friends at the same time.
Well, yeah, that's another reason why you'll find a lot of neurodivergent folks panic if 2 different friend groups are getting together.
Yeah.
So things like an open house for a neurodivergent person, where I've got family and work friends and like drinking buddies, and that's just because what mask do I wear to that?
Yeah.
Because every single one of them is this much different. And are they going to notice? And are they going to ask questions? And what am I going to say?
Yeah, because you have to change the type of humor. You have to change the type of the level of intimacy
Oh, you
in the
change
conversation.
everything.
There's
You
so
change your
many
body position. You
Yeah.
change your vocal intonation.
Mm-hmm.
You change the way you carry yourself sometimes. And the thing is that most of us are so used to code switching to a certain degree that we don't realize the amount of energy it takes.
Yeah.
You're basically full on putting on a play in your day-to-day life. You're like, I am assuming this role, this character.
Yeah, because the idea that you can stay true to yourself and be your authentic self and that's it for the entire day is just not feasible.
Well, and typically different friend groups can only handle part of me. So if I'm with friend group A that knows me for my theater persona, right?
Yeah.
I'm loud, I'm funny, I'm a little bit brash, I'm in your face, I'm because that's what happens in that community and that's what you got to do. If I am with my family, I come from a family of introverts. Those two don't mix very well together. So I have to be a little bit quieter. I have to be a little bit more not that I'm, not accepted, but like that I have to change the way I present myself in that moment to fit in with what's going on around me. And so when you have those two colliding sort of
Yeah.
what are they? Worlds, there we go. Then who am I in that? It also can lead to a very much a loss of a sense of self.
Which is a strange phenomenon for somebody who relies on masks to exist.
Mm-hmm. You forget what your face looks like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know I have been guilty of that along the way, especially before I knew I was on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Because, like, I would even make a conscious effort, right? Like, I remember when I got the job for the college as a manager, I researched what managers looked like, how they presented themselves, how they talked.
Right. I giggle
And
because
so
I've done that, right?
I didn't show up to work as me. Like, God forbid.
I played a role.
I played a role of a manager.
Yeah.
And it would have been way easier looking back on it. It would have been way more productive. I probably would have been way more successful had I known I was autistic at the time.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of choices that I made that I thought would be the choice that a manager would make, as opposed to trusting my gut and making a choice that I would make.
Yeah. I remember dating in college, and I remember asking the person I was dating, who do you need me to be? And in the moment, I thought I was just being like super caring and considerate. But in hindsight, that's hecka cringy. Like, ugh.
Well, I wouldn't even say cringy. It's just...
it hurts.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough because you're almost surrendering any semblance of self for what you think is the betterment of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Obviously, it didn't last, but
yeah,
that's neither here nor there. But the conversation went something like, well, I want you to be yourself. And I went, okay, but what version of myself? And they went, what? And then I realized, oh, you mean not everyone has like this deck of cards of versions of themselves they can go through to be like, nope. And because when we meet new people, that's what we do. We take out our deck of masks and we go, this one, nope, this one, this. We hold it up to what they're wearing and we try to compare the two and go, that kind of looks close. It's got a feather here and and we try to get as close as we can and mirror what they've got going on and assume that that's the side of ourselves that can show. Here's where it gets weird.
Yeah.
Neurotypicals think that's lying.
I was just going to say, yeah. Because you're being disingenuous.
But at the same time, it's like...
it's a survival skill.
It's a you can't handle the truth. Like,
well, it's not even a you can't handle the truth.
No, sometimes it is.
It's because I was talking about this just the other day, right? The fact, and this is a fact. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? I'm still waiting for the day it happens. The minute you disclose neurodivergency, people treat you differently.
We had a conversation about this the other day when we were talking about when to disclose something like that.
Yep.
And I want to pose the question again, just because I don't think there is an answer, but I like to ponder it sometimes.
Yeah.
I have found better luck in disclosing my neurodivergency when I say I'm actually neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I'm actually ADHD, or I'm actually something else. Because if I just let it land, people make their own assumptions.
And they're never good.
They're never good. No.
Yeah.
They never are. They're going to have an image pulled up before you get a chance to even say who you are.
Yeah.
And so I found that saying I'm actually neurodivergent, that one word, that one little caveat word, makes the difference between someone giving me an extra 2 minutes to explain versus not. Not always, but a lot of times.
And I do want to circle back a little bit to what we were talking about a little bit before.
Sure.
Because like when you're talking about all of the effort to mask and to do all of this stuff, surprisingly enough, I don't do that anymore.
Well, and not everybody can either, you realize.
Well, it's not even a matter of can. It's a matter of making the conscious choice not to. And I've had a lot of therapy training for that.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
If you're a neurodivergent, I think, because it took me a lot of work.
It does.
To just be your authentic self and let go of the masks and just let the chips fall where they may. I understand that I am also in a very interesting situation in my life where I can do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would love to do that.
Yeah.
But because you risk your job.
Yeah.
You risk your relationships.
You risk almost
friendships.
everything.
You even risk your family when it comes to disclosing autism. And so a lot of people will never disclose. And my heart goes out to them.
And it's not always just disclose. It's disclosing your authentic self.
Yeah.
Because you can have family, you can have friends who know the word, but they're still looking at the mask to you.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that that's different.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've had some people tell me that, oh, you're different now. You've changed.
Nah.
And I'm like, no, I'm not different. I'm me.
I'm just more me than I let you see before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know?
And that's a huge distinction.
Yeah, it is.
And that's true freedom.
How?
I know. Sorry.
These claws have got to be clipped, young lady.
You're lucky you're cute, Willow.
Aunt Holly may not care. We might clip them anyway. Anyway.
That's fair. I'm not gonna say no. But yeah, so so when we're looking at it like that wise, so like, because I know a lot of people who don't have that luxury, who have to mask every single day,
or they don't know how to take it off.
Explain more.
So I have family members, I will not list them by name to keep their own anonymity, who were not diagnosed with their neurodivergency until they were in their 40s or later.
Okay.
How did they get to that point? They masked so successfully for so long that it wasn't until they couldn't hold up that energy level anymore that they were able to see underneath of it and see that there was some neurodivergency there. You know, how those are like people who are late diagnosed. You know, how did I go this long without knowing? Well, you've got really successful coping skills.
Yeah.
You've got really successful masks that have been in place for a long time. And you will find people, that's why there's whole communities of just late diagnosed people, because it's a whole different ball game to go back and reanalyze your whole life with a new lens and look at it like, oh, that's why nobody wanted to be my friend in high school. Oh, that's why I was more friends with the teacher than I was with the third grade students I was sitting next to. Oh, that was, like all of these different things that you don't think about. But in hindsight, you go, oh yeah, that makes way more sense. Yeah. But those are successful coping skills. and their successful survival skills. And so if you've had a mask on for 40, 50 years, how are you going to know what that's like to take it off?
Yeah, it was very depressing.
Yeah.
When I made the leap and made the realization I was autistic
Mm-hmm.
is when the depression really kicked in, because I had to grieve
Yeah.
the loss of my functionality. And that was the hardest thing for me to do. I was like, that explains why I have not reached any of my life goals before the time I'm 40.
It's a weird confirmation bias.
And at the same time, it confirms that I probably will never reach my life goals.
Or that they need to shift.
That's true.
Yeah.
I will never reach my initial life goal.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, if you want to be an NBA basketball player and you're 5 foot, you can do it. It's going to be really hard.
Unless your name is Spud.
Right? I mean, unless you can do it, you could probably do it, but it's going to be a lot harder.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with another family. A lot of my family has neurodivergency, by the way. So we have these conversations all the time. But I had a conversation with a family member about the difference between a neurotypical struggle and a neurodivergent struggle, and in the scope of using the analogy of getting to work. Right?
Yeah.
The neurotypical person gets up for the day, they get ready to go, they get in their car, they go to work. Done.
Yeah.
The neurodivergent person, again, this is an analogy, right? Not how people actually go to work, but this is the analogy of any kind of functioning. They get up, they have to like fight their way through their own house to get the things that they need, that they don't know where they are, to find them, to be able to get to go to work. You get in the car is like missing a wheel. It doesn't start. You have to like jump it to get it going, and even then it tops out at 25 miles an hour and you're late to work. And your boss looks at you and goes, "Why were you late to work?" And you're like, "You're lucky I even got here."
Yeah.
Like, how much farther does that person have to go? Driving 3 hours that way versus the person who lives just down the street. And they're like, "Well, we both made it to work. We should be able to both make it to work on time." It is a whole different struggle. That even amongst neurodivergent people, you have no idea the brain capacity they have to go with to get through to those different things, and that it fluctuates. So I can be we've been friends long enough that you've seen me at, an 800% full capability day.
Yeah.
And you've seen me almost completely go nonverbal.
Same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And not very many of my friends have seen both extremes of that.
Yeah.
But you can't really hold me at any one of those because I'm both. I have days where I just completely shut down. I have days where I do everything that I've put off for the last 6 months in an afternoon. And I'm both of those. And so which is weird because our brains like to do black and whites. Our brains like to do opposing extremes.
Yeah.
And we're like the epitome of not that because we're everything in the middle.
I get that. And I'm trying to sort of think. So I'm thinking about like my own experience in that regard, right? And like coming to that realization of sort of grieving the loss of your functionality.
Mm-hmm.
But then the reality of, and circling back to friendships, mm-hmm. right? How many friendships I have lost along the way because I didn't know I was neurodivergent. And
it's easy to do.
I couldn't explain to people why I would just leave a party. I would just leave. Like, I'm out, I'm done.
What do they call that? An Irish goodbye or whatever? Something like that?
I think so. Very
cool. Where you're just like,
yeah.
Wait, where'd so-and-so go?
Yeah. And what I would tell myself is I just need a break. I need to walk away, just go for a walk, and then I'll come back.
You never come back.
And I just never come back.
Right, yeah.
But now I recognize that is my autism limit, and that's my limit.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, all right, I'm done. At least now I let people know.
Yeah.
Like I'm done.
Well, the whole, it's not an argument, but the whole conversation within yourself of what you think you can handle versus what you can handle
Mm-hmm.
is often really hard to come to grips with.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many times where I think that I should just be able to, suck it up, buttercup, and get it in there and I can't. And I have to be like, it's not happening today. And there's grace in that. And I'm just going to move on. I could sit here and feel bad about it for the next 4 years, or I'm going to just go, we will try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But we fight ourselves quite a bit. And one of the things that I find helpful about having the label occasionally, I know some people are like, oh, anti-labels. One of the things I find helpful about having the label is it's actually validation that I can actually go, okay, it gives me permission to take care of myself.
100%. And I liken it to like with this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be able to do consistently 2 interviews a week. However,
You don't have the bandwidth for that.
I don't have the bandwidth.
As your friend, you don't have the bandwidth.
And I don't have the bandwidth because of the scheduling and the communication to get to the interview piece.
If you just had to show up and do it, that'd be fine. But
Yeah.
you don't have the bandwidth for the rest of it.
But and I try to force myself to do it, and I'll send like 3 emails a day, and people don't understand. No, that's all the capacity I have after a day of work is to send 3 emails, and I can't send more than 3 because I can only send 3 anyway. There's a whole process. There's a whole reason. It's a whole neurodivergent rabbit hole we don't need to get into right now. But just know that at the end of the day, I look at the calendar and I'm like, I could have everything mapped out 3 months in advance if I just had the bandwidth. And I don't have the bandwidth.
Because think of how much extra mental weight though you're carrying around just living in a world that's not built for the way your brain works.
Yeah.
The
amount of attention to detail and detail oriented that requires a job like that with scheduling, I don't have.
I have it sometimes.
Yeah, I just don't have that.
Sometimes I don't. How do you explain that to a boss, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I could be really good at this.
Mm-hmm.
Then I won't for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
There are jobs I've considered taking. We've talked about this. There's jobs I've considered taking that I went, that would require me to be at hyper focus 90% of the time, and I can't do it. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, there are jobs now that I would never apply for.
Yeah.
Whereas before I would apply for everything and anything because getting a job was so rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the toughest piece. Getting a job.
It can be. Yeah.
It's always been for me.
Yeah. I have a slightly different flavor of the Neurospicy, and so it hasn't been super hard for me. I'm very blessed in the social department because social interaction is one of my hyper focuses. That was super helpful. Comes with having a theater background. But it also means that I don't always understand the limits of how much that social interaction takes out of me. And I'm always surprised because I love social interaction and it's one of the things I gravitate towards. And then I always get really surprised when I'm exhausted later.
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
story of my life.
What's wrong with me? Oh, I guess I did do all the things this weekend. Coming kind of back to where that ties into friendships and things like that. You were talking about how hard it is to keep friends as a neurodivergent person.
Yeah, because I only have so much capacity for friendships.
Well, it's hard in many different ways. There's that. There's only so much bandwidth you have on a day-to-day basis. You and I have had conversations before about how in order to connect that person is a friend with you, you have to have interaction with them on a semi-regular basis doesn't necessarily have to be in person, but you have to have contact with them on a semi-regular basis.
Yes.
And at some point you reach the point where there's just only so many hours in the day.
Yep.
And energy and all these other things. Like, you don't have, if that is your stipulation on friendship, you don't have the capacity to have 300 friends.
Yeah, I don't.
It's just,
no,
there are not enough hours.
I would love to have the capacity.
Right?
I would.
Yes.
I just don't.
Yeah, not to that level, right?
Yeah.
Again, now we're talking about friendship levels.
Yeah.
Not to that level.
Yeah.
You could have friends that were more like acquaintance types where you didn't have to talk to them all the time, but then that doesn't register to you as being a quote unquote friend.
Well, not only that, but then the other piece too is when you don't have a linear memory.
Okay.
You don't have the time awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So if I haven't texted you in 3 days or 24 days, well, but like not you in particular, right? But yeah, because I would think the same thing. You don't text me in a day. I'm like, Holly, what the hell's going on?
What's going on? Are you okay? I'm coming over.
But there are like some people like I would love to have the capacity to remind myself that I need to text somebody once a week.
Object permanence.
I don't have that.
I want to talk about object permanence.
Yeah.
It is especially true for ADHD people. I believe it is for autism as well, but I'm not as well versed in autism as you are.
Yeah.
Object permanence in friendship is a thing.
Okay.
I had to set up semi-regular calls with my grandparents who live in California because I went like 2.5 years without talking to them because I forgot they existed.
Yes. And until you see a photograph of them on Facebook, or you see a photograph or something like that, they're like, oh, crap. I've been gone for like a year.
My mom was like, when did you last time you talked to Grandma and Grandpa? I'm like, oh, no. It's been a really long time. And it's not because I didn't want to talk to them. I just was so focused on what was screaming it right in front of my face that anything that didn't have an alarm going off, figuratively or literally, was just kind of out here in no man's land. It's like time blindness for me.
Yeah.
If it's not this week, it might as well be 8 years from now.
Yeah.
I cannot see it. I have trained myself to be able to hold a middle ground that's about a month out, which is the soon category is what I call it.
I don't have that.
I had to train myself to have it. It's hard.
Yeah.
But if it's not this week, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So if you give me a due date that's like 3 weeks in the future, until it's like this week, I don't know that it exists. This drove my mother nuts when I was in school because she would ask on Friday if I had any homework. And I said, no, because tomorrow is Saturday and we don't have school on Saturday. So therefore I didn't have any homework until Sunday night when all of a sudden I would have a project due. And she goes, I asked you on Friday if you had any homework. I was like, well, that wasn't a school day. So no, I didn't consider that I had any homework. Because I couldn't think through the weekend to Monday. I can now, but like I couldn't then. I had to learn how to be like, okay, what's in the next couple of days? And like I said, I've been able to kind of push that out and hold a tentative, awareness, like your peripheral vision where you can see movement, but it's not super clear, of things that are about a month out. But it's taken me a lot of effort to try and do that.
It's interesting because that kind of sums up my entire military experience.
Okay.
Yeah, like so it didn't occur to me until later in life that other people would call their families on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Here I am stationed in Germany.
Right.
Nobody really knows where I am. I don't have a cell phone or any of that stuff. And I haven't talked to my brother or my father or my grandparents for almost like 2 years.
People are asking them, how's Shawn doing?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. And I know I have a lot of family members that are still really mad at me for that behavior.
But it's not personal.
It's not. It's literally my brain.
It's not even conscious.
Yeah. I keep forgetting until like it's in like for medication, right? I need to see my medication.
Yeah.
If I wake up and I don't see it, I will forget to take it.
Yeah.
So if I have acetaminophen, I need to see it. Otherwise, I'll be like, and I'm like, why is my back hurting today? Oh, that's right.
I didn't take the stuff.
My Tylenol. Mm-hmm.
I I have tried a new strategy in that I don't put my clothes in the dresser anymore.
Mm.
I have put them on a bookshelf, and I can see everything I own to wear, because now when I need to find something to wear, I can see exactly everything I have. I don't have to hunt through different drawers
Oh, yeah.
because it's all right there. It's visually all right there. It gets a little overwhelming sometimes because that's a lot to look at. Sometimes I have some bright colors in there as well. But like, I can see everything that's there.
I can see that beneficial.
My kingdom to be able to do that in the fridge, but that's a different story entirely.
So inevitably, when you get your new house, you're going to have to get that fridge that has the see-through door.
Yeah, or something that I can just see everything.
They
I
have
need
those.
cameras from all sides, because if I don't see it,
Yeah, they
I
have
need it.
those.
It doesn't exist then.
They probably built them just for people who are neurodivergent.
Probably did.
Like, why do you need a see-through?
Well, and
That's why.
don't be afraid, though, to adapt things that aren't built for you into ways that work for you.
Oh, 100%.
For example, the vegetable crisper and the fruit drawer, I put things in there to die, because when they go in there, I forget they exist and I pull them out when they're moldy. I don't care if it's been there 1 day or 4 years. Like, they go in there, I forget they exist. However, put your condiments in the crisper drawer, because when you want a condiment, you will hunt through the fridge to find it.
That's a good point.
But you aren't going to hunt through and find an orange.
And you'll save more room for oranges on the top shelf.
Or in the door.
Yeah.
Where you're going, I need something to eat. What I have is, oh, look, I've got apples.
Yeah.
Is that how it's intended to be used? No, but who cares? It works for you.
Life hacks are life hacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes you got to do friend hacks.
Okay.
Because I can't tell you how many friends I've lost just because I didn't keep up with them.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just spitballing here. Maybe you take a picture and you put it on a board and you kind of go, okay, I have a little extra bandwidth. Who haven't I talked to in a while? And you move them around on sticky notes or something like that. And so you look at the people that you don't talk to all the time, but I have a little extra bandwidth. Who can I talk to that I haven't in a while?
Do you ever have the experience, because this is what I'm struggling with
Mhm.
at this moment in time, is there's one person in particular that I would love to have an open, regular, healthy relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
But the events of our lives are tied to so much trauma. I can't talk to that person without reliving the trauma.
Okay.
And so I've had to sort of let that friendship go.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't get over the traumatic experience that we had that formed that friendship in the first place.
Because they're interconnected.
They're tied together.
Yeah.
And you can't unwind, despite how much I've tried.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Yeah.
I mean...
And there's no reason looking for an answer now, because it's going to be that way until my brain has had enough time to process and separate the two. And it's probably more likely it's still just too fresh, even though it's been a couple of years.
Yeah. There's also potentially the concept of, and this is, again, maybe a later thing, but the idea of, I talk about this with people quite a bit when we talk about friends who have recently gone through breakups or divorces or things like that. You got to forge new memories.
Yeah.
And you need to reclaim the friendship or the relationship or the whatever without that trauma in it. You know, so if you're going through a breakup or whatever, some grieving process, right? You have to reclaim brushing your teeth in that new memory. You have to reclaim doing the laundry in that new way. And the same is true for friendships. To a degree, it looks a little bit different, but you have to reclaim some memories that aren't tied to that.
Yeah.
So that you have a choice to work with. As long as the only memory you have of that person is tied to the trauma,
yep,
it will always be about the person and the trauma.
And I can't get my mental to shift.
Yeah.
And that is the curse of autism, I think.
It might be something along the lines of like, Do something completely innocuous, like go to an arcade or something silly. And
Oh, I know that ship has sailed.
okay. Like I said, I don't know the specifics.
Yeah,
But
I have lost that opportunity.
okay.
And I know that's going to always be the case.
Yeah.
It's something that now that I know what I know, I wouldn't do again.
Yeah.
And I would sort of build sort of something in there for what you're talking about.
Mhm.
At the same time, though, there are certain people that I just can't interact with
Mhm.
because for some reason, for me, memories are also tied to the emotions experienced during the memory.
Oh yeah. That's
And
one of our
so
biggest part of memory is
I have to feel it over again.
Yeah.
And that's like,
or the echo of it at least. Yeah.
Yeah. But the echo can sting just as much as the triggering event.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a therapy technique. One of the techniques they do with it's not immersion therapy. I don't think it's confrontation therapy because that sounds really aggressive, but it's making you experience it again so that you realize that it's not as big as the shadow your brain portrays.
Is that like EMDR or whatever?
The rapid eye movement one?
Yeah.
I think so, but potentially it's also a couple of other things like CBT, cognitive behavior therapy.
Okay.
And even actually a little bit of DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy, this idea that two things can be true at the same time.
That was huge for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That things are not always mutually exclusive.
They never are.
Very rarely.
No, they never are.
That's true.
Yeah. I don't think it's possible in a life cycle to have things exactly the opposite. There's too many variables.
Too many what ifs.
Even if it's 99.999%,
there's still about one chance.
Very, very rare, almost like never.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Almost never.
Yeah.
And I believe with that DBT theory that allowed me to sort of believe that, because I used to be very black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It is or it isn't. It is or it isn't.
It is a coping strategy for neurodivergency to jump to the quick judgment.
Yes.
So that we don't we jump to the extreme so that we can prep for it because we don't like being surprised.
And it's more efficient.
Yes, it is more efficient, except for when it's wrong.
Yeah.
Which is also like 90% of the time. We're like, I jumped to a conclusion and that wasn't the right one. I always tell people, I said, if you're going to tell me something that's not great news, just tell me, because whatever I make up in my mind, way worse and usually wrong.
Oh, 100%.
The story I've made up, if I don't hear from you because you say you're going to text me when you get home just so I know you got home, I'll have you dead on the side of the road or abducted by aliens, and in reality, you went to Taco Bell and got home late. It's just...
Yeah. And in your mind that it's not true, but you can't stop your mind from thinking that.
That is a whole conversation I would love to have with you sometime. I think it's its own conversation.
Okay.
But the idea behind, I've never met a neurotypical person who is able to separate their body from their mind from themselves.
Yeah, I don't think I can either.
That you can separate those two? You can. Because the fact that you just told me that your mind did something and the rest of you knew it wasn't right, your mind and you are actually two separate connection points in your brain. Or parts of your mind, anyway. I'm not talking multiple personalities. I'm not talking DID systems or anything like that.
Right.
I'm talking when your brain does not behave the way you want it to.
Yeah.
It tells me that you and your brain are not the same thing.
Interesting.
And I've never met a neurotypical person who understood that.
Yeah, I still don't know if I do.
That's fair. But let's say I'm having a bad day, right? I whatever happened, something happened, I'm having a bad day. My back can go out and my body and my mind are two separate things. That one you understand,
yes.
Right? Because the body's like, we're done for the day, thank you. And my brain's like, okay. However, as a neurodivergent person, my brain also betrays me sometimes. and my brain can be done, and my brain can be at capacity and poop out for the night, even though the rest of me
That is true.
is not done. So there is actually like, there are 3 of me here. Not multiple personalities, but like there's bodily me,
Yeah.
there is mental brain portion me, and then there's me.
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
Processing.
Yeah. Again, that's a whole other conversation, but I would love to have it sometime because I've never met a neurotypical person who understood that
Yeah, that's a hard one for me to grasp.
or even knew what I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you don't.
They're like, well, they're all you. I'm like, yeah, but they're all separate at the same time.
That's definitely a different way of looking at it.
I mean, I have struggled with anxiety for many, many years, right?
Yeah.
I can have mental anxiety, which is where my brain is ruminating and spiraling and going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I can have panic anxiety where my soul level is freaking out about whatever. I can also have bodily anxiety where I have all the symptoms of anxiety, but my brain is quiet.
Interesting. I never have the latter.
It's weird.
I mean, I can shut my brain off. I do appreciate that.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah. I can take a mental vacation.
Mine is a 3-legged gerbil on a hamster wheel. It just does what it does.
But there have been times recently in particular where I'm just so exhausted mentally from figuring out what to do in a situation next. And like my body's not tired.
Mm-hmm.
But
your brain's tired.
I'm so exhausted I can't get off the couch.
You, soul you, has consciously given a directive to your brain to turn off.
Yeah.
2 separate things.
And I just want to curl in a dark corner and just not think.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time I think about the situation at hand.
Or just too much, it's like,
oh yeah,
there's not just one drop of water. It's either the whole
if
tsunami.
I could do it one drop at a time, I wouldn't have these problems to begin with.
That's true.
The problem is when the dam breaks.
Yeah.
I spent a considerable amount of my time every day filtering information.
That reminds me.
And placing information in different spots. Because if I have too much information in one spot or another, there's a system of almost like dams that I have in my head of information, like silos of bodies of water.
You've got locks.
Yeah.
You've got boat locks that you're letting people in and out.
Eventually, when things get too much or there's a monkey wrench and one of the dams breaks, then I have to recalculate the water across the entire globe. And that's like a daily occurrence. That's what my brain goes through every single day because I have so many ideas, so many thoughts, just so much. And it just never until I turn it off. But if I turn it on,
Hoover Dam comes up again.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked before about me using the analogy of my brain being Grand Central Station.
Yeah.
And trains coming in, trains going out, everything's coming in. You got to keep track of it all. And there's, so it's funny that yours is the port lock.
Yeah.
I got the train station down. You got the port lock down. But you mentioned something about this daily occurrence concept. Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of bring it back to the theme of what we're talking about today.
Friendships, yeah.
Yeah, because we go all over the board. It's fine.
Everybody loves that about our podcast.
Yes.
So it's okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we will cover everything.
Yeah.
What'd you talk about? Yes.
Everything.
Great. But coming back to that friendship idea, I've also lost friends because I don't stay the same very long.
Interesting.
I am a person who is constantly wanting to learn more things, constantly growing, constantly changing, constantly trying to be a better version of myself, constantly trying to, fine tune this efficiency and economize that. And sometimes I'll get new information and it will completely change the way I look at myself. And I have, quote unquote, grown myself out of friendships because they were only friends with the version of me that I was at the time.
I could see that.
And as somebody who doesn't know how to just sit in one spot and really can't be stagnant on a growth, like, don't get me wrong, I can sit on a couch with the best of them, but like emotionally stagnant. I don't know how to not be constantly learning new information.
Yeah.
I have grown myself out of friendships because they were only there for that chapter or that version of me that I was at that time. And they're like, well, now you're different. I'm just growing. Well, I don't like this version.
Yeah, I've dealt with that.
Great, thanks. It's better, but okay.
Yeah. I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Because like I'm always in a perpetual state of trying to improve myself.
Mhm.
And I am not attached to any of my belief systems.
Okay.
Like I believe what I believe. I also leave room to adjust and grow.
I say that very similarly, but in a slightly different word set, which is I believe what I believe based on the information I have at this time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You bring me something else that looks completely different, I might have to rethink that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be true of, food choices and preferences.
Yep.
I can say I don't like tomatoes, and I don't like tomatoes. And then someone goes, "But what about this salsa?" And I go, "Okay, I don't like most tomatoes. I don't like most tomatoes."
Yeah.
And so I'm not so nothing in our neurodivergent life is set in concrete.
Yeah. Yeah. If you would have asked me 4 years ago if UFOs were real, I would have said no. Today, I have a totally different answer.
That's fair.
My whole belief structure has changed.
Well, I got different information. I mean, look at the way society has built things like that, right?
Yeah.
You tell people in 1200 that there's these tiny things called atoms that make up everything. They're going to be like,
Blasphemy.
Excuse me? Absolutely not. But now we know that, hey, guess what? There's these tiny little atoms and they make up everything. But we didn't have the information at the time. We didn't have the knowledge at the time. And I also don't know a whole lot of neurotypicals who will get new information and go back and recategorize backwards.
I know a lot of people who don't.
Yeah.
And who actually think I'm weird because I do.
Oh, I can't not.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting, which is why sometimes when someone...
involuntary.
I know. It is. Which is why when someone comes to me, especially like in a friendship or relationship, and drops some like emotional bomb on me that I didn't know was that way, or, I've never liked this about you or whatever. And then I have to go, hold on, I got to recalibrate everything that I've ever interacted with you now from the beginning of time up until now with this new information. That's exhausting.
And it's every time.
Uh-huh.
It's every time. And people don't realize it's also like every time at the grocery store.
I feel like a live version of like the navigation system in the car where you make wrong turns and go,
yeah,
recalibrating.
Mm-hmm. Or you go into the cereal aisle and you see a box of something that isn't cereal. It's not quite granola. It's not quite this. It's not quite that. And I have to sit there and stare at the box for about 30 seconds until I figure out, okay, for today's purposes, I'm going to classify this as cereal and I will work on the rest of it later. So like even that sort of routine, so like that explains so many things about the way I processed information as a child that I just totally should have picked up on.
I don't do it in that capacity, but I have to do that in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's mean to me,
yeah,
I have to make it make sense why they logically thought that was a good idea.
Interesting.
My brain cannot handle the idea that somebody was just mean 'cause. My brain tells me there has to be a logical explanation why that was their reaction.
I used to think that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't anymore.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting better.
And I think it's because of past work experiences.
Potentially.
I have met really mean, evil people in my life.
Well, most of us do things with it. Well, okay. Most of us do things with a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of just reactionary response is.
No.
And even if they are reactionary responses, there's a logic order system behind the reactionary response. And so, why I just moved not that long ago to my new apartment in the last 3 months. And I was joking with the fact that I can finally put the soap on the right-hand side of the sink where it belongs. Because in my household where I came from, it was always on the left. And it was on the left because that's the way the sinks were built. But it has bothered me every single time because I don't think the soap belongs over there. I am right-handed. I want the soap right here, not over here.
I get that.
But there's a logic to it to me.
Yeah.
Whereas to the rest of my family, the soap was over there because that's where there was counter space available to put the soap.
And I wonder that's also a piece that makes the friendship piece so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Is because when you think in patterns and you're looking for a pattern in friendships, people don't have patterns. People are people, and you don't
People
know.
are messy.
Yeah. They don't fit into a box.
At least not nicely.
Well, I used to think that everybody fit into their little respective little boxes, and I could sort of pit this kind of person.
Unless you grossly overgeneralize it, yeah.
100% I was doing that, right? Part of my neurodivergency that I didn't understand.
Here's a huge box.
Yeah. And talk about a huge monumental shift, knowing I'm autistic. Oh, I have to recalibrate all of this stuff now because I met a mean person.
I've started recalibrating a lot of different things. Not everybody likes labels. I find quite a bit of comfort in labels because they tell me where I fit in a category versus where I don't. And the way I see it is very much more like making a marble sculpture.
Yeah.
I'm not building up with clay.
Yeah.
I have a block of stone and I'm chipping away what it's not to find what's left over. And so I find a lot of help in labels, but not everybody does. And to each their own, it's just a different way of looking at things. But that same way of, to you, the big giant box was a gross overgeneralization in that point, right? Mm-hmm. I like to use labels to kind of help me understand the general shape of a person. Like, it's that quick sketch. I don't know if any of you are artists, but it's that quick sketch of like, okay, here's what the body looks like, and I'll fill in the details later. And not everybody does that. Some people have to start with, okay, here's exactly what the eyeball looks like. This is why you don't draw.
That's exactly why I don't draw.
Because you would never get past the eyeball.
And when I did do a couple of paintings, the objects in my paintings were not relational at all.
That's fair.
In size, stature, or subject matter.
But to themselves, they were fine.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You've created a whole new absurdist art form.
Yes. Where I was accused on more than one occasion of being a child. And I say that because, like, I remember I was so proud and I took it to work, and the general consensus from like 12 people that barely knew me was like, which one of your kids drew this?
Oh no. Whoops.
I drew it. I guess I shouldn't put this up in my office.
I mean, own it. I would just go with it. I think when we're talking about understanding other people, and coming to those other types of conversations, I really think communication is the biggest part of it.
Oh, 100%.
You and I have had so many conversations about the way we both are.
Yeah.
I don't like silence. We know this about me. We know that if I sit too long in silence, I'm going to make a lot of assumptions, and most of them are probably wrong. So when you and I are having conversations and I don't hear anything for a while, I start to get a little nervous. How have we fixed that?
I tell you I'm processing.
Or I go, are you processing, or did I make you mad?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to assume that I made you mad and that you don't want to ever talk to me again. And you're like, no, I just am still chewing on the last bomb that you dropped.
Yeah.
Like,
it's processing. It's like, I have to process this.
And so
I can move forward.
Sure. And now that I know that, we have so much better conversations. But in our early friendship, there were so many times I thought you were mad at me and didn't want to talk to me anymore. Yeah. Because then
And
you're like, why are you upset?
and correct me if I'm wrong, I even had the conversation where like I don't get mad. Like
Yeah.
I talked to you about that, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't have anger is not an emotion I experience.
It's not one I do either.
Yeah.
I will get
frustrated.
But I also don't think there's a purpose in anger.
I agree. It's a useless emotion.
It is. It has a maximum radius too.
Yeah.
It is the like stink bomb of emotions.
Yeah.
It just kind of it's like a fire that doesn't really care who it touches on the way by. And so it's not pointed, it doesn't serve a purpose, you can't aim it. It's an area coverage. And you can capture friend, foe, everything in between in that bubble. And I don't think it serves a purpose. I know that a lot of people struggle with anger, and I'm not trying to call anybody out if that's something that you struggle with. But for me personally, it is not one that I experience. Or if I do, it's very, 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 very rare and usually has some other kind of verb that's actually better fitting.
Yeah.
But I will get hurt way more easy than I get upset.
Oh, 100%.
I can hurt my own feelings.
100%.
I don't need any help in that department.
Yeah, I will kick myself for saying or doing something and think that World War III is going to kick out. And in reality, nobody else even noticed.
Right? Like, oh, we'll get the toothpaste next time.
Okay. Like, but you're not, wait, but what?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so having conversations with the friends you have can also be just as challenging
Yes.
in keeping a friendship. So it's not just about finding a friend. How are you going to keep one when you got one?
Yeah.
Because communication is what builds that bridge. So what do you do if you have people who are not exceptionally verbal or not exceptional, it's not the word I mean, but like they just don't talk a lot.
Yeah.
They're just not super chatty people.
Speaking is not just something they enjoy or not even enjoy, just a lot of people just don't want to talk.
It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of bandwidth. And you are actually actively thinking and processing while you are putting sound into your face, and you have to be able to block this out so that you can continue to think around it. It's a lot to process. Being able to speak actively it's a marathon.
Yes. And I can do this all day long.
Yeah.
You throw one more person into the mix, it diminishes my capacity to do a full 2 hours or a full hour. You add one more, it's cut in half.
Yeah.
It's just the processing to do more than one conversation at once has always been a barrier for me.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Well, because you're processing twice as much information, I have to listen to what that person says and think about how I feel about it because you need extra processing time.
Yep.
I process on the fly, so I'm really thankful for that. You and I have had conversations about how I don't even know what I think until I've talked about it. And then I go, oh, look, that's what I think. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should think about that longer.
Which is in contrast with me where I have to think before I speak because I want to make sure I get the thought right before I speak it to volume.
Which is sometimes really interesting, which is why we have conversations 2 and 3 times. Because I have to have it immediately to know what I think. You have to process it, and then we'll come back around to it the second time, which is good because that's usually about the time I'm ready to go again.
Yeah. And that happens a lot.
It does.
It happens a lot.
So we'll be sitting there and all of a sudden someone will start a conversation like, oh, we're going back to that one. All right, hold on. Let me get my notes.
And I respect that and appreciate that you allow that divergency for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never know when it's going to thought, capture it before it goes away. Because it's very important. Because if it goes away, it could be
we may never see
forever.
it again. Yeah. And I dated a guy one time in college who would not have a conversation more than once.
It was over and done.
Yep. And I was like, but I have new information. It goes, too bad. We already talked about it. And I went, I still don't understand that one. But no, they would only have a conversation once. Like, well, we already talked about this. Okay, but new information has come to light. There's been a news update,
Right.
News break. We got to go around again.
Right.
We've discovered new clues. Nope, we already talked about it.
I don't know how I would handle that.
I didn't.
I don't blame you.
Didn't handle it very well at all.
Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't want to? What? Like, what? I want to know more.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was a neurodivergency.
Yeah.
Until fairly recently.
That's why you talk to neurotypical people and you go to conversations again and again. They go, oh,
yeah.
you're
like,
still on
you
that?
Want me to tell you? You always. I get accused of that all the time. Still, like you always talk about autism. You always talk. It's because it's so much
still figuring
changing.
it out.
I'm still figuring it out.
Right?
Stuff happens all the time.
Don't spill it on the computer with the hand waving.
That's fair. But yeah, so it's very interesting.
I also think that, again, not to like toot our own horns here, but like we have a really good balance in our friendship that's really beneficial to both of us. And if you can find something like that, do.
Yeah.
Because our slightly different flavors of neurodivergency really complement one another quite well.
100%.
To the point where, if you're ruminating, I have enough spontaneity in me to be like, let's go get ice cream.
Yeah.
And it will break you out of that pattern just a little bit.
Yeah.
If I am going a million miles an hour and doing the what if game to the point that, I'm 14 years in the future figuring what that's going to look like, you're like, how about we talk about tomorrow and we'll leave 14 years in the future to our future selves. And I go, well, okay, fine. But like, we have found a balance that works for us. But again, how old are we? How long does it take to find a friendship like that?
46 years for me.
Right. 38 for me.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're going and picking that out off the shelf at Kmart.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I'm also like,
do we even have Kmarts anymore? Sorry, continue.
I don't think so.
I think they do.
They do?
No, I said that's why you're not picking them off the shelf there. They don't exist. Okay. Sorry, continue.
That's all right. Where was I going? I don't even remember.
I don't either. They don't. Friendships like that don't exist. Something about picking it off the shelf.
Yeah, and one of the things that some people don't understand. Where was I going with this? A lot of people, which I didn't understand, have a limit on how much communication can exist in a typical day. Right?
You see my face?
Yeah. Because a lot of people have expressed
you talk too
displeasure.
Much.
Yeah.
You talk too often.
Yeah.
I don't want to text you every other second.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I need that.
Yeah.
Not that I am codependent. I need that communication because that's where I'm picking up the signals of how everything else is working. And if I don't have the communication, I'm left to my own devices, and we already know how accurate that is.
You and me both.
I will come up with some weird stuff,
But it's almost like having a translator.
Yeah.
Like it's having a safe person that you can run the world by. Mm-hmm. Because the world is a messed up place and there's very little sympathy.
And we do that quite a bit, actually. Yeah. I probably at least 3 times a week, if not once a day, one of the two of us goes, can I run something by you?
Yep.
What is this situation? Am I just thinking about this weirdly? What do you make of that? No, that's bizarre. That's not normal behavior. Okay, cool. Glad it's not just me. And we do that all the time, actually. But it's super helpful to be like, hey, here's what happened, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. And it's also really helpful if you are a person who has a hard time standing up for yourself.
Oh, 100%.
Because the other person can be like, oh, hell no, on your behalf. And then you've got that feedback or that reaction that you really want to have, but your brain won't let you go there.
Yeah, and plus I need a trust filter.
A trust filter.
Yeah. I trust people so easily and let people into my world, and like people tend to take advantage. And having a trust filter where I can say, always like, is this person safe? Like, is this like, am I misreading that? And having
That's
that,
not normal behavior.
that's not normal. I'm like, okay, then I guess I gotta pivot
Yeah.
and move to the left.
Or just, don't hand over the keys to the apartment yet. Just kind of just hang off on that one a little bit. I think a lot of that actually comes from the intensity of emotions we feel as neurodivergents, because we kind of feel emotions stuck on 11.
Oh, yeah.
And so if not, 14, 27, whatever, pick your number. We just feel things a lot, and we feel them really deeply, and we feel them to this ridiculous degree. And so that can be problematic in a relationship, in friendships, because I have a hard time knowing how much of it is, I don't want to say justifiable, because that's not what I mean either, but like how much of it is just the way I feel it versus what it is. Because even if it's only a 2, I'm going to feel it at a 12.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. And so I need to be able to know the difference between the feeling I'm having and the reality of what it is. And that is hard on friendships sometimes.
Yes.
Especially if you don't have the work done and the self-awareness done to be able to know, okay, I'm feeling this to a panic level, but in reality, part of my brain knows that it's probably not as intense as I'm feeling it. I like watching the thoughts come across your face.
So, cause I'm trying to think, because like I'm trying to not combat or contrast that bit of information.
I dropped my fidget.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I'm like, I can't think without my fidget. And I dropped it. I just have a squishy.
So I'm contrasting in my brain like that idea, and also that the idea or concept that my body interprets emotions in a weird, unique way. Okay. And the only emotion that I know for sure that I experience is joy.
Okay.
That is one of those. And for those of you watching, if you want an experiment in good human wholeheartedness and just positivity, do a Goog of autism joy.
Do a Goog?
Do a Goog. That's my shout out to Mark Foreman. Goog. That's my shout out to Mark Foreman.
Do a Goog.
Mark Norman.
Okay.
Autistic comedian.
Learning new phraseology every day.
Yeah. So yeah, do a Goog of autism joy and just watch videos related to autism joy, and you will see a myriad or treasure trove or whatever of children just beaming with just joyful anticipation, and just it's I liken it to a quote that I heard once from I hate my memory sometimes.
Oh, them.
Black Flag, the lead singer of Black Flag.
Okay.
Henry Rollins.
Okay.
For me, my tail doesn't wag. No, I don't wag my tail. My tail wags my entire body.
All right. I see that.
And once that information of joy is in there, I just can't help but experience that. Everything else, it's a mishmash of experience of emotions that I don't know how to process.
There's a word for that, and I'm failing it right now.
I don't know it either.
You do. It's just not one we're thinking of right now. Alexithymia.
Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Alexithymia with neurodivergencies means that we feel emotions in weird ways.
Yeah.
Can't tell you how many times I've been like, am I getting sick? Oh no, I'm sad. Hold on. Never mind.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
do I have a fever? No, I am frustrated at something and I just felt it in my body before my emotion registered any of it.
Yeah.
And you got to learn your own manual. The ways that we were taught of we're taught a neurotypical manual. It's like being a mechanic of a car and you've got a Ford manual for like a German made car. They don't exactly function the same. It's like a Beetle versus a tank. The engines aren't in the same spot. They don't quite function the same way. Like
Yeah.
you got to kind of process some of those a little bit differently, and it's you got to learn where your emotions are seated, and they're different.
So let me circle back for just a second.
Okay.
Because you used the word taught.
Mm-hmm.
And I chuckle because like I wasn't taught anything. So did you actually get taught anything about like emotional intelligence or like emotions in general? Or is that something you were sort of as a child left to your own devices as well?
I say taught in the essence of like society has taught us.
Okay.
As in like you were taught through, getting yelled at or getting slapped across the wrist for doing it wrong, or kids on the playground didn't want to be your friend because you did something wrong, or like we are taught through trial and error the what the neurotypical judgment is. Like, yeah, I had some health classes, tell you things like you can feel sad. Sadness usually feels like this, but
see, I don't remember any of those.
I think I remember some, but you are just like almost a generation older than I am, just a little bit. So that could have been a slightly different time frame. It's like 6 years, but half a generation difference. But yeah, it could be a little bit different. Could also just be where we grew up as well.
That's fair too.
I mean, and we didn't get a ton, but I was a person who always needed to make sense of things. And so if I didn't understand something, I needed it to make sense to a degree. And not everything, because with math, like I didn't care, but like with emotions and things like that, if I didn't get it, I needed to make it make sense. And this comes back to one of those reasons where it's frustrating for me in friendships as well, is because if I don't understand a person's behavior as to why they behave that way, I need to make it make sense to me.
Yeah.
Even if it's some completely warped logic, I need to find the through line of, okay, you had this child, like I'm sitting there with the thread on the board, right? Going, okay, you had this childhood experience and then you learned this behavior and then you had this emotion. And that's why I'm seeing, okay, I kind of figured out where that came from. But I need to know the through line as to why that was an acceptable reaction. And sometimes you just don't get it, and it drives me absolutely batty.
That's interesting, because I remember as a child, I just knew things. Like I just knew how to do things.
Sometimes.
And if I didn't know how to do it, I wouldn't even try.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Because like if I wasn't good at it, I wouldn't try it again.
We have had this conversation in my family before. I will leave the names out of it. But there are people in my family who we have had conversations with who have said, if I don't know for sure that I will at least be marginally good at something, I won't even try it.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, if I'm not decent at it, I probably won't continue because I'm following the dopamine train. And if there's no dopamine train and not doing a good job. Well, there's a level, like there's a challenge and then there's like, this is too hard, I quit.
And I think that's kind of where I fall.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so, but it's very much a neurodivergency thing as well, of going, I am so scared of failing and being told I did it wrong again.
Yeah.
Because a neurodivergent child by 18, I read somewhere, has heard like displeasure at doing things wrong like 30,000 times more than the child who isn't.
Yeah.
And so that's where things like rejection sensitivity dysphoria come into play, is because we've been told, no, you're wrong. You're doing it wrong. Stop it. That's not the way to do it, by people who have found ways that work for them.
Yeah.
Is this a wrong way to do it, or is it just a different way to do it?
That's the conversation I had today, actually.
Is it wrong, or is it just different?
Because we were talking about the difficulty with interviews.
Mhm.
And when it comes down to the fact that the way the interview questions are written,
Mhm.
a lot of people who are neurotypical, our brains cannot process the information on those questions.
Okay.
And
We neurodivergent folks?
yeah,
Okay.
thank you. And
They're
the
written
thing I
from-
keep hearing over and over and over again is, well, have you practiced this? Have you tried using this? Have you tried? But at the same time, it's like, so what you're telling me is, even today, I have to adapt my brain to a neurotypical way of thinking just to interview.
Mhm.
And your only solution is to try harder.
Yep.
Try more.
Do
Like,
better.
my brain, I don't have a leg. I can't run a marathon. Try harder.
Well,
hop faster.
If you just practiced having a leg more, you would be.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
There are. Some of this is generational, or at least you see it a lot more generationally speaking.
Yeah.
But there are whole categorizations of people who were just taught that if you have some kind of disability or some kind of difference or divergence, you just have to work harder.
Yeah.
And to a degree, that's not wrong. However, there is no sense in working significantly harder than you need to. Will you have to work harder at stupid, mundane things that shouldn't have to work hard at? Like getting in the shower? Yeah, that one's a rough one for me sometimes. I'm always happy once I get in there, but the act of like getting in the shower seems like it's a marathon in and of itself. But at the same time, there's no need to have to work harder in areas that aren't necessary. And that's the problem. Like,
Yeah.
I already have to work harder just to go to the grocery store. Do I also need to work harder at work, at an interview, every time I go out of the house, every time I try to find clothes that don't make my skin crawl? Like, do I have to work harder all the time?
And right now, the default answer is yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't either.
I think we should fix it.
And we've been at it for an hour and a half.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Did we have anything else that we wanted to circle back around on friendships specifically? Because we've kind of gone all over the board, as we are accustomed to doing.
No, but I do want to do an activity together.
Ooh.
Because I think it's very fitting that we call this something other than just a neurodiversity podcast.
Okay.
And I really like the fact that I've named another one.
Okay.
And I know we're going to be doing this again and again and again and again. So, like, do we have a name for what this is? And we can circle back at a later date and later time and name it for folks, so it'll be a surprise when it airs. But
yeah, we have another something corner coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That'll be interesting. I have some thoughts.
The Neurospicy podcast.
There you go.
Does that work? No. Maybe.
I don't know. Is that trademarked? I know people have said it before, but we will think on that one and come up with something so that if we do this again, we can, if and when we do this again, we can have.
No, it's when. It's not if.
Okay. If and when.
No, it's when.
Okay, when? When we do it again.
Yeah.
When we do it again. All right, fine. Whatever. We can't have a name to go with it. But I do want to circle back really quickly just for folks who are like, I want to know more about friendship stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, the best advice I have is literally just do the things that you already love doing and see who's around you when you're doing them.
And try to find an activity or activities that's advertised as neurodivergent friendly.
If you can, yeah.
If you can.
Yeah.
Like, join a support group.
Yeah.
I always recommend that to people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have found so many friends from support groups of just people who have the same sort of similar lived experience.
Or a Discord if you're not a support group kind of person, or a chat room, or an email chain, or a group that gets together once a quarter and goes and gets ice cream. Like, it doesn't have to be anything major, but just people who have similar lived experiences, because that's like 2/10 of the battle right there, right?
Yeah.
Just that little bit of difference. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of neurotypicals kind of tend to flock together. We get it, and we get the need for those different kinds of things. It's not to say you can't be friends with neurotypicals. Please don't think I'm being exclusionary. But there's something to be said for somebody who understands that I'm going to do things a little bit differently, and I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to tell you why I do it that way, so that we can have the conversation, so that we can all be on the same page, and you're willing to listen because you also do things a little bit differently, and you want to have the same conversation with me so that we can be on the same page as well.
And you're not hyper annoyed by the fact that I have these accommodation needs.
Yeah. And it's not even because, for me, it's not even an accommodation.
Yeah.
Because it's just being a friend, because I do the same thing, and I just expect
fair.
it. You know, I want you to do the same thing for me. So therefore, is it an accommodation? I'm not going out of my way to do those things for you. I'm doing what I would want you to do for me as well.
That's legit.
You know,
that's legit.
If you want someone to be able to adjust and adapt around you, you have to be adjustable and adaptable as well.
Yeah, because I know there are a lot of people that are neurodivergent that haven't done the work, that aren't ready.
And it takes time. Don't get me wrong.
And effort.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
We talk about it like, oh, you haven't done the work yet. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's many, many years of therapy.
There's a reason I go to therapy once every other week and will for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Because neurotypical world is wild.
Well, and just even processing your brain is a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're asking, so the struggles you have in day-to-day life as a person who's neurodivergent, you are shining a microscope on that, or a magnifying glass on that, when you're talking about friendships.
Yeah.
Because you're highlighting all of those little uniquenesses
that you hide from the rest of the world,
or that you just kind of brush under the rug a little bit. You know, it's fine. Yeah. Okay, but now it's up close and personal, and now I can't just put on my headphones and not deal with it. We were talking to some mutual friends as well about, we have mutual friends who we know that when they share things, they need extra support because they're always going to have to second guess themselves.
Yeah.
Or that we have other friends who also get to a point where they just emotionally check out of a conversation because they've used their words up for the day.
Yeah.
And so we have to stop and check sometimes and be like, hey, buddy, you good? Or did you just run out of words for today? Run out of words. Great. Perfect. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. If you need something, I'm here. Yeah. But again, you learn those little things, and you have to be able to be flexible and willing to be flexible on your end as well.
Right. Just like I have a support group in Roseburg.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people wouldn't drive down there once a month.
Mm-hmm.
But I love these people. They're my friends.
Yeah.
And so I drive the 2.5 hours one way once a month for a 2-hour meeting.
Because it's important to have your people.
Because it's important to have our people. And I know that my people can't handle more than a couple hours.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what we plan. And we make it, and then that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
That's what they need. And I'm happy to do so.
Mm-hmm. And it's all kind of a balance. And you have to find.
They would do the same for me if they had the ability.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to find people that are willing to learn with you.
Yeah.
So if you're a person who's like, I don't have a whole ton of friends, find people who are just gracious enough to willing to learn with you. Because sometimes we learn as we go. There's definitely, you and I have been friends, well, just about a year and a half now?
About that, yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
And there's still times where we go, okay, new thing I just discovered was a problem that I didn't know was a problem before. Yeah. Let's have this.
Yeah.
But please don't use that exact phrase. It has bad taste in my mouth when you say it.
Yes.
And we go, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And I go, I don't neither. But now I do. I don't like it. I've decided. There's flexibility there, and that ability to adapt and be kind of malleable, fluent, not fluent.
Yes.
Fluid. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes. And
with
that in mind, kindness is also a key.
Mhm.
Like, I can't
Empathy.
stress enough. It has to start with kindness towards you
Mhm.
and kindness towards the other person.
Well, and be clear about what the expectations are.
Yeah. And if your expectations aren't getting met,
Mhm.
I hope you have the ability to say something.
And don't think that just because you know what your expectations are, that the other person knows what those expectations are.
Yes.
There have been
'cause-
so many times when I have caught myself getting frustrated because I had an expectation that I thought was obvious that I did not communicate.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting here holding somebody accountable to this expectation that I never voiced because to me it was obvious.
Yeah.
And to you or to whoever, you're going, I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was an option, right? And so don't be afraid to talk about things that you think are way too obvious because it's all good communication. And I would rather talk about it 4 and 5 and 6 times about, where the socks are on, the socks go on the left-hand side of the drawer versus the right-hand side of the drawer and why that's important. I would rather have that conversation 6 times than to have somebody get mad at me because I forgot or didn't think about it and just threw socks in a drawer.
Yeah. And one of the things that I learned in therapy that has helped more than anything else
Mhm.
was just that. It is impossible, literally impossible, for you to know what someone else is thinking.
Mhm.
So you have to ask. Because otherwise, you're just guessing. And 90% of the time, you're going to guess wrong.
And you're going to catastrophize it too.
Yes. And it has the potential for dire consequences if you don't address it.
You will build a whole foundation up in your mind that never happened.
Yeah.
There's a line in one of the Hunger Games movies where I don't even remember the names of the characters right now, but one of the characters goes, do what Annie does when she doesn't know what's real and what's not. She asks. And she trusts me that I wouldn't lie to her.
Yeah.
And I think that's very true because my brain will play internal feelings so loud that I can't tell how loud they were actually supposed to be. And so I will, rather than sit there and just try to deal with it. I mean, how many times on a weekly basis do you get a text from me going, "Are you upset at me?" Or did I hurt your feelings when I said that? Or, me worrying about something that I didn't need to worry about.
You used to do it a lot more.
Right. I used to do it so often.
Yeah. And then
So often.
I have gotten you to the point now where you don't do it as much because I think I finally have you.
I finally trust that you're not going to just get mad at me and run away.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
But
and there's nothing you could say or do that's going to make me mad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't get mad. We just talked about that.
Yeah. Well, even if I did, like there would be no situation
Yeah.
where you would say something that would make me mad.
Yeah. And so I still think it sometimes, but when it happens, I go, okay, can you just remind me that you're not mad and that I didn't say something that ruined our whole friendship? And you're like, I'm not mad and you didn't ruin our whole friendship. And I went, great, cool, thanks. Because I just needed to put that to bed in my head. And so don't be afraid to ask for what you need, whether that's affirmation, whether that's validation, whether that is a night off because you are overstimulated and you just need to not talk anymore today.
And on top of that, if you do that and your needs don't get met,
I dropped it again. It's fine.
If you do that and your needs aren't getting met,
Yeah.
or the person reacts in a way that's not healthy for you, just because you asked for a boundary and they said no or they violated that boundary, now you know for sure that there has to be something changed in order for that relationship to be healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a different conversation. We can also talk about whether that person has capacity or not to do what you've asked.
That's a good one too.
Because sometimes there are things that I need in life that not everyone has the capability to meet. And then there's this whole conversation. Again, there might be a 2.0 of this friendship conversation because, again, we talk about the neurodivergent need to find all of that in one package.
Yeah.
And most people do not have all the skills that they need in another person. So I might have my, the one who communicates all the time and is willing to talk about anything, that might be person A. And my person who will talk about deep stuff and really dissect what's going on in my brain might be person B. Person B might also be able to be the, go out on a whim and get an ice cream cone, but that might not be them.
Yeah.
And it's okay if that's a whole different person. And so you can have these different needs met by multiple people, but that's not how our brain tends to think of it when we think of, I want friends.
Well, and I think it's a scarcity model too.
Yeah.
Up until recently, I didn't have a lot of friends that could fit those roles because I just didn't have access to people.
Sure.
And I think the other thing that I would say in terms of friendship is give yourself a mission.
Well, put yourself out there.
And give yourself a mission.
Yeah, do stuff.
Yeah, so like what I mean by give yourself a mission is like make sure if you go to a party, your mission, if you choose to accept it, and it is mission impossible sometimes, introduce yourself to 5 people at a party.
Yeah.
That's going to be really tough. It's going to be really hard, and you might be able to only do it once the first time.
Or if you have the different flavor,
yeah,
remember 5 names of people at the party.
Yeah.
Because I have the opposite one. I'll introduce myself to 400 people.
Yeah.
I will not remember the names of any of them.
I can't either.
But
it's a problem.
Again, it's a different side of the same problem, right? So if introducing yourself to people is hard and putting yourself out there, give yourself that challenge to take that next step.
Yeah.
If it's remembering those people later, give that yourself the challenge. Write it on a piece of sticky note if you have to, whatever. But give yourself, it goes back to do the work.
Take a picture of the person and then put the alt text in that person with the name. And then that way, after the party, you can scroll through and you can memorize names to faces.
You can put pictures in the contacts on your phone.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to. Yep. And that's okay too. So just don't be afraid to ask for what you need to make it work.
Yep.
If somebody's unwilling to work with you on that person's probably not good quality to be your friend.
100%.
If they're willing to, within reason, if you're asking them to give you a Maserati, okay, might be a bit much. That's a bit much. But if you're asking for an accommodation of, hey, can I take a picture because I'm bad with face to name remembrance and I want to be able to remember that we had this conversation.
Yeah.
If they say no,
it's not worthy of your conversation anyway.
Or there's a different conversation that needs to be had. Maybe that person's insecure, whatever. But if they're not willing to entertain the idea, that person's not going to be your friend.
Yeah. And that shouldn't be on you.
Yeah. And that's not on you. Move on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Try to put yourself in situations where you can meet people with similar interests, because then you've already have the icebreaker.
Yeah.
You already are doing the thing that you like to do and they're doing it with you. So they at least have that as well. So put yourself in those situations. Don't be afraid to talk to people if you can. And at the same time, don't expect everything all in one person.
No. And I cannot stress this enough. Give yourself grace
and time
for when you make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this is the first time you're doing something like this, you're gonna make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay too.
And if you have people that you trust in your life, whether it's family, whatever,
even if it's a DSP,
sure, run these things by them and say, okay, here was the interaction I had. Everything was going fine. I said this and then it got weird. What did I do? Break it down with someone. If you have a therapist, they are wonderful at doing that. And try to learn some of the patterns.
And you can also role play with your therapist
or your DSP or whoever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We do that sometimes. How am I going to have this conversation with so-and-so? I don't know. Try it like this. No, that didn't work. Okay, we'll try something different. Yeah. But just also know that the level of friendship that you're looking for takes time.
Yeah.
This did not happen overnight.
No.
It happened pretty quickly, but it didn't happen overnight. And it took a lot of work, and it's taken a lot of communication, and it's taken a lot of interaction and continued communication. Yeah. It is not just okay, Okay, we've checked the friend box. Now we're good. We don't have to work at it anymore.
But then again, that goes back to the neurodivergency, where we're both people who want to have those further conversations and want to discuss things and move, not move, but learn and grow. Yeah.
So find your tribe, find your people.
And if you suspect you're autistic, reach out to your local autism society, and you will find that self-diagnosis is perfectly okay within the neurodivergent realm.
Or peer reviewed.
Yeah. Yeah.
We jokingly say that I'm peer reviewed autistic.
Yeah.
I will never get a diagnosis for it because there's too many other things going on for me personally. But you can spot it in me a mile away.
And that's an individualized journey.
Yeah, it is.
Diagnosis is not the right answer for everyone. Some people, it's the right answer. Some people, it's the wrong answer. And I think there just has to be room for both to, like you're saying, they're not mutually exclusive.
And you don't have to tell everybody that you're autistic, but you can.
Yeah.
If that's an important piece for you.
Yeah, like I wear it like a badge of honor now.
Yeah.
But I can.
And because you don't want to be friends with people who aren't accepting of that.
100%.
And so
100%.
You don't want to have to mask about it. So you're like, hey, I am autistic. I am going to potentially need some additional help in these areas.
Yeah.
And owning that and being not afraid to have that conversation goes a long way. Not with everybody, but if it doesn't go a long way with that person, maybe that person's not meant to be your friend. And I mean, there's a whole other conversation we could get into about not getting taken advantage of emotionally, whatever. That is a whole other therapeutic conversation that we can have. But as far as meeting people, as far as getting that started,
that's a good place.
Yeah. And don't feel discouraged if your friendships aren't as deep as you want them. It has to start somewhere.
Because it could take a while for that friendship to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Holly.
Of course. Always. Thanks for hanging out with us. Bye.